It is officially that time of year. The 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs are set. The season isn't officially over just yet. There is one game left between Winnipeg and Seattle, but it's a meaningless game, has no playoff implications. We know all 8 of the first round matchups, which means it's time to make my bracket, make my predictions, and give them to you guys. Now, this video, like every single year, is usually one of my most disliked videos because obviously there's going to be people who get upset if I don't pick their favorite team to, win their series or whatever. Don't be that person though. It's just my prediction. They're probably not even going to be right. They usually aren't half the time. This is just completely for fun, and feel free to let me know what your playoff predictions look like down below in the comments. And also, if you want to join my bracket challenge that I put together for everyone to, submit a bracket to, I will leave a link to that down below in the description, so feel free to go do that as well. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start in the Western Conference with the first seed in the Central against the second wildcard team, Colorado versus Nashville. Really tough news for Nashville with the whole Saros injury. I believe they said it's an ankle sprain, and the timeline does jeopardize, his ability to play for them in the postseason. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen there if Saros is even going to get in a game in the first round. Shouldn't be a big surprise here at all, but I'm going to take Colorado, and I'm going to say 5 games. I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I feel like Nashville will get a win on a home ice in either game 3 or game 4. They have a raucous crowd, obviously, especially in the postseason, and they've had a really good home record all year long. So I feel like Nashville should be able to eke one out on home ice, but I mean, if Saros hasn't played a single game, wouldn't be surprised at all to see this ending up in a sweep. Moving on now to the next series, we have the 2 versus 3 seed in the Central Division, the Minnesota Wild with home ice advantage against the St. Louis Blues. I think this is going to be an amazing series. It definitely has the potential to be the best of the first round in my opinion. I mean, this is the case with most playoff series, but I feel like this one especially is going to come down to goaltending. I'm interested to see who St. Louis actually starts in game 1. I don't know if that has been released yet or not, but Ville Husso has been the better goaltender than Binnington basically all season long and has pretty much served as their starter. However, Jordan Binnington the last couple weeks of the season was absolutely lights out, and obviously he's the one with more experience. He was their goaltender throughout the playoffs when they won the Stanley Cup back in 2019. For Minnesota, I'm guessing they're going to go with starting Fleury. I mean, Cam Talbot has been solid for them, but I don't think you go out and trade for a guy like Fleury at the deadline with the intention of not starting him in game 1 of the postseason. This is honestly a really tough series to call. I'm going to go with the Minnesota Wild. I'm going to say it takes them all 7 games though. I would honestly be surprised if this isn't a 6 or 7 game series. I give the Wild the slight edge in goaltending. They also have a Kirill Kaprizov who's a game-breaking talent, has the ability to just take over a game offensively, and St. Louis doesn't really have a forward like that. Obviously, they have a lot of really good forwards. They have one of the deepest forward cores in the league, but they don't have a Kirill Kaprizov. So I'm going with the Minnesota Wild in 7 games. If I had to rank on a scale of 1 to 10 how confident I am in this pick, probably like a 3 or a 4 to be honest. Moving on now to the other side of the bracket, we have the 1 seed in the Pacific against the second wildcard team, and that is the Calgary Flames against the Dallas Stars. I've said this multiple times throughout the season. I'm a really big fan of this Calgary Flames team. I think they're poised to go on a pretty deep playoff run this year, so it shouldn't be a surprise that I am going to take them to win this series. Even though they did finish points-wise behind the Minnesota Wild in the regular season, they had 111 while the Wild had 113. I do still view Calgary as the second best team in the Western Conference, and they're going up against a Dallas Stars team that hasn't really been anything special at any point throughout the season. There's been a lot of ups and downs. They're towards the bottom half of the league in terms of goals for per game. They're also not great in terms of goals against per game. I also trust Jacob Markstrom in a playoff series a lot more than Jake Ottinger. Now, Ottinger has been fine all season long. I'm not saying he's a bad goaltender, but he's very inexperienced. I think he's only ever gotten into 2 postseason games, and in both times it was in relief of another goaltender. He's never started one. So again, I do think Calgary should be able to win this series. I hate predicting sweeps, so I'm not going to do that here. I guess I'll just go 5 games. So a gentleman's sweep similar to the Colorado-Nashville prediction. Moving on now to the final first round matchup in the Western Conference, the Edmonton Oilers against the Los Angeles Kings. Went over the series a little bit in my most recent video where I talked about the teams that I feel like have the most pressure on them heading into the playoffs. I said the Oilers were one of those teams that I feel like have a lot of pressure on them. You absolutely just cannot lose this series, especially, considering the way that they went out last playoffs and how they haven't really had any playoff success at all with Connor McDavid yet. They have home ice advantage here in the first round against a team for the most part that is relatively inexperienced. Obviously, still a lot of really good veterans on the team, but the youngsters are a big reason, why the Kings were able to make the playoffs this year. I do think this is going to be a long series. I'm going to say it goes 7 games. My reasoning for that is because I think the Kings are a really pesky team. I don't think they're going to go down without a fight, and I'm still not 100% sold on Edmonton's goaltending. I know Mike Smith has been on an absolute heater, but again, kind of just thinking about what happened last year, I just can't be 100% confident in Mike Smith. My final prediction though, I'm taking the Oilers to win the series. Like I said, I do think it'll be a long one, so Oilers in 7 is my prediction. So that is the first round of the Western Conference done. I didn't pick a single upset over there, which kind kind of makes me worry because, the NHL is very unpredictable. There's most likely going to be an upset, but it is what it is. Moving on to the Eastern Conference now, starting off with the Florida Panthers against the Washington Capitals. The President's Trophy winning Florida Panthers against Washington, who finished with the least amount of points in the regular season of any Eastern Conference team. Florida absolutely has to and should 100% win this series. They're an absolute wagon, have been all season long. They can score goals at a pretty ridiculous rate. They have an incredibly deep lineup, especially after the deadline, getting Ben Sherratt on the back end, and obviously the big one is Claude Giroux, and Giroux has fit like a glove in Florida since coming over in that trade. It's unfortunate Florida won't start the series with Aaron Ekblad, but I really don't think they're going to need him here. I'm taking the Panthers to win this series, and I'm going to say they do it in 5 games. The only way I can see Florida losing this series is if they get incredibly poor goaltending, which I guess is a possibility, but I'm confident Bobrovsky can at least be good enough for them to win this series, and let's not pretend Washington gets great goaltending either. They haven't really this season. Moving along now, we have the 2 versus 3 matchup in the Atlantic Division. Man, is this ever going to be a great series. The Toronto Maple Leafs against the Tampa Bay Lightning. If you watched the most recent video on my channel, you would already know what my prediction is for this series. I'm not confident in this prediction at all. I am going to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm going to say it goes 7 games. And listen, I know the Bolts are back-to-back defending Stanley Cup champions, but my reasoning for picking Toronto here is basically just, if they don't win a round this year, they may never win a round ever again. You have to win at some point. This is the best team they've ever had. This is the most wins they've had in franchise history by, I think, 5. You have the most likely the Hart Trophy winner in Austin Matthews. Mitch Marner's playing the best hockey of his career. I will say, for my prediction's sake, the goaltending matchup definitely terrifies the heck out of me. I would much rather have Andrei Vasilevsky than Jack Campbell. I'm sure everybody would, but when Jack Campbell is on top of his game, we know he can play at an elite level. Honestly, I'm just really excited to watch this series. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. I hope it's a long one, and I think it's going to be, again, prediction Leafs in 7, but bringing up the confidence meter again, I would probably give it like a 2 out of 10 on this one. The next series we have is the Carolina Hurricanes against the Boston Bruins, so 1 seed against a wildcard team, but I honestly feel like this series is going to be a lot closer than, a 1 seed playing a wildcard. These two teams should know each other very well. I think this is the 3rd time in the last 4 playoffs that these teams have met. Boston eliminated Carolina in the conference finals in 2019, and then the first round in 2020, so the Bruins have had their number in both of the playoff matchups recently. Now, the big thing when it comes to this series injury-wise is, is Frederik Andersen healthy? Is he going to be able to play in this series? He hasn't played a game since mid-April. If he doesn't play, honestly, I feel like there's a good chance Boston could win this series. Freddie Andersen actually played lights out against Boston during the regular season, had 2 shutouts in 3 games, went 3-0, had like a .990 save percentage in those games, something crazy. Andersen has been lights out for them all season long, likely going to be a finalist for the Vezina Trophy, so if he misses this series, obviously massive setback for Carolina. This should be a really fun series. The Bruins have one of the best defenses in the National Hockey League. Obviously, Carolina has a lot of firepower up front with guys like Svechnikov and Aho. Hopefully, they can get Marty Necas going, who had a bit of a disappointing season. I honestly think I'm going to take the upset here. I'm going to go with the Boston Bruins, and I'm going to say it goes 7 games just because I think it's going to be really closely contested series. Boston is a fantastic team. Obviously, they got better after the deadline, acquiring Hampus Lindholm, and Jake DeBrusk, ever since requesting a trade, has been a really important player for them. If there wasn't such a huge question mark surrounding Freddie Andersen's health, I think I'd say Canes in 7, but obviously that's not the case. So final prediction, Boston Bruins in 7, predicting the upset here. Moving on now to the final matchup of the first round, the Pittsburgh Penguins against the New York Rangers. This is a really interesting series. Obviously the New York Rangers have home ice advantage here. They finished as the higher seed. I'll be honest, I'm really not sold on the Rangers being legit cup contenders. I don't want to call them frauds because I don't think that's the case. I think they are a great team, an up-and-coming team, but they had a lot of things go right for them this year. Obviously Chris Kreider had a career year goal scoring wise. They got absolutely ridiculous goaltending from Igor Shesterkin. He's going to win the Vezina Trophy. He's a massive reason why the Rangers had the kind of season that they had. Now, the Penguins have a pretty good goaltender for themselves. Tristan Jarry had a really great bounce-back regular season after his, kind of poor showing in the first round of last year's playoffs. I'm going to go with another upset here. I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Penguins to win this series in 6 games. I definitely think their experience should play a pretty big factor in this series. I'm not really liking betting against Igor Shesterkin, but hey, it's just a prediction. I don't really care who wins in the end. I'm not someone who really wants their predictions to come true or anything. So that does it for my first round predictions. So let's just recap it right quick. Out in the Western Conference, I have Colorado taking down Nashville in 5, Minnesota beating St. Louis in 7, Calgary beating Dallas in 5, Oilers beating Kings in 7, Eastern Conference, Florida beating the Washington Capitals in 5, Leafs beating Tampa in 7, Bruins beating Carolina in 7, and Pittsburgh beating the Rangers in 6. So now we move on to the second round, and from here on out I'm not going to spend too much time like breaking down these matchups because really it's all hypothetical. The main part of this video was to give you guys my first round predictions, but since we're already here, I have to finish my bracket. So the first second round matchup in the Western Conference, Colorado versus Minnesota. I'm going to take Colorado in 6 on this one. I just feel like Colorado, this is the year they have to make the conference finals. They've still yet to do that with this core. Again, referencing the video that I made yesterday, I feel like there is a lot of pressure on Colorado to kind of get over that hump, not get bounced in the second round again. I like Minnesota. I do think they could put up a good fight, but in the end, I just feel like they'd be kind of outmatched here. So Colorado in 6 for this matchup. Moving on to the other second round matchup in the West, Edmonton versus Calgary. Please give us this. If this series happens, which I'm predicting it to, and I think there's a really high chance it does happen, I feel like there's a really good chance it could be the best series we see in the entire playoffs. That would be just pure entertainment for hopefully 6 or 7 games. This series should be a bloodbath if it happens. My prediction though, I am just going to go with the Calgary Flames, and I'll say 6 games for this one as well. I just think they're the much better team. Like I said earlier, I feel like Calgary is the second best team in the Western Conference behind Colorado. I feel like these two teams are destined to match up in the conference finals, so that's where I'm going with this one. Now moving on to the Eastern Conference second round matchups, Toronto versus Florida. This would be very entertaining. The regular season games that these two teams played against each other this season were exactly that, pure entertainment. So much offensive firepower on each of these teams. I think it'd be a very high scoring series for sure. For my prediction, I'm actually going to take the Maple Leafs. My thing with Toronto, I feel like, is if they win a round, I feel like their confidence is going to just go through the roof. They're no longer going to be playing with all those nerves that they play with in the first round. The hurdle for the Toronto Maple Leafs really is the first round. And once they get past that, I feel like, this team could do some special things. So I'm going to take them here to beat Florida in the second round. Who knows if they're even going to match up? If they do, I'm confident it'll be a great series. But yeah, my prediction, Toronto Maple Leafs in 7. Next up, we have Boston versus Pittsburgh. I'm going to say Pittsburgh in 6 for my prediction on this series. I feel like the Penguins are going to be a really tough out these playoffs. This is potentially the last chance they have to go on a run with this core. Malkin, Letang, both UFAs at the end of the season. Brian Russ is a UFA as well. It's likely that one of those 3 guys are going to leave. I'd put my money on being Brian Russ. But hey, who knows? It'd be pretty crazy if Malkin or Letang left. Crosby is still one of the best players on the planet. Him versus Bergeron for a series would be a lot of fun. So I'm taking the Penguins to win this. And again, I don't really have a ton of reasoning for like my second round picks because it's all hypothetical and there's no guarantee these matchups even happen. So this is my final 4 in the West, Colorado and Calgary, and in the East, Toronto and Pittsburgh. We'll start in the Western Conference with Colorado and Calgary. And honestly, I'm going to take the underdog in this one. I'm going to take the Calgary Flames to make the Stanley Cup Finals. They played Colorado pretty well in the regular season. I think as a team, they match up well with Colorado. I don't think they're quite as stacked as Colorado is, but forward lines 1 through 3, they should be able to compete with those guys. Johnny Gaudreau, Lindholm, and Matthew Tkachuk. That's been one of the best lines in the entire National Hockey League all season long. Defensively, Calgary has been great. When Markstrom is hot, he's one of the best goaltenders in the league. I think if any team in the Western Conference can do it, I think it would be Calgary. And by do it, I mean beat Colorado. And for game amount, I'll just say Calgary in 6 because I feel like in order for them to close out the series, it'd probably be better suited to do it on home ice in game 6 as opposed to going back to Colorado for game 7. Now moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals, Toronto against Pittsburgh. I'm going to take Toronto here. Give me an all-Canadian Stanley Cup final. Hook it into my veins. Again, I just feel like if Toronto goes on a run, they're just going to get better and better as the playoffs roll along. Their confidence is just going to get higher and higher. The nerves are going to go down. Is that good reasoning for picking them to make the Stanley Cup Finals? Probably not, but again, these are just predictions. They're just for fun. And again, once you get past the first round, it's just all hypothetical anyways. So now we have my Stanley Cup Final, Calgary against the Toronto Maple Leafs. This would be a great series, I feel like, and I'm going to go with Calgary to win the Stanley Cup this year. I just feel like that team is almost built perfectly. There really isn't any weaknesses. Like I said, forward lines 1 through 3. They have 3 scoring lines and 3 lines that, play in their own end as well, responsible defensively. And then defensively, their top 6 on the blue line has been good all season long. Markstrom, again, when he's on top of his game, he's lights out. He's one of the best goaltenders in the league. Maybe based on pure skill, Toronto would have the edge in this series, but I feel like Calgary's physicality would be a pretty big factor too. So that is my Stanley Cup champion, the Calgary Flames. And I'll say this one goes 7 games. Why not? Stanley Cup Final, right? Now I gotta enter the amount of goals that would be scored in the Stanley Cup Final. So since I'm thinking it's gonna be a 7-game series, and let's say there's an average of like 5 or 6 goals a game, I'll say there's like 38 goals scored in this Stanley Cup Final matchup. So that is my bracket for the 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs. Again, like I said at the start, if I predicted your favorite team to lose, don't be that person that just gets angry in the comments and leaves a dislike. Who really cares? Again, I'm usually not great at predictions. These are probably not going to be right. I do these bracket challenges every single playoff strictly for fun, and like I said at the beginning, I'm really interested to see your guys' predictions, so let me know your thoughts, especially on the first round, because that's where we're at. Let me know your predictions for the first round down below in the comments. Again, there will be a link to my channel Bracket League down below in the description if you want to submit your bracket there. And since the regular season is all but over, I just want to give a huge thank you to all of you guys for, sticking with me, supporting the channel throughout the regular season. I had a blast. Let's have a great postseason now. If you guys enjoyed today's video, a like would be greatly appreciated. And if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.